If you're anything like me, you've no doubt experienced that exhilarating sensation when you're driving down the road and without warning spot a fascinating piece of furniture and you secretly hope that it is truly an excellent find. And as your anticipation grows, your heart races a little bit with the hint of the excitement of the thought of unearthing a good piece. Well, this is precisely the adventure that unfolded for me with this remarkable coffee table. While I was driving, I spotted it sitting on the sidewalk and my heart raced a little bit with anticipation as I approached. Upon a closer inspection, I realized that it was indeed a solid piece, much larger than most coffee tables I encounter. And I knew it held potential and I couldn't resist the urge to bring it home. Looking closely at the top, I noticed it had plenty of stains and some noticeable marks, clearly showing it needed a lot of care and a good cleanup. Still, I could totally see the potential hiding behind those imperfections, and I was eager to turn this coffee table into a beautiful piece that would really catch the eye of anyone who walked into my home. To start off, this table had been left outside for ages and it was really very grimy. So I needed to give it a solid scrub to remove all the dirt. So I grabbed my gloves and some soapy water and I got to work scrubbing it down, and honestly it was pretty disgusting. But after that cleanup I could finally see the surface clearly and assess what I was dealing with. Once I had finished cleaning the table, I needed to determine the best way to handle the surface, and I was toying around with the idea of whether I should either sand it or grab the carbide scraper, but I eventually made the decision to go with this scraper. It is a lot of work, but I do appreciate how quickly the results show up from when you use the carbide scraper. So I spent quite a bit of time carefully scraping the surface. And let me tell you, my back and arms were genuinely feeling it by the end and definitely the next day. But fortunately, my dad was around and he offered to jump in and assist with those last little bits and edges that I was having trouble with. Now, it was still going to need a good sand down after I had finished with the scraper, but instead of doing that right now, I decided to flip it over and give the rest of the body a scuff sand while I had someone looking after my baby. Also, although the carbide scraper had got off most of the stains and marks, there were a few deeper stains that were still showing through, so I decided I was going to try some household bleach on those sections. So I covered the whole top in bleach and then I pushed it out into the sun to let that lighten up the top and hopefully get rid of some of those stains that were still showing through. So in this next segment, I had the little one with me, which made it tricky to finish sanding the top. So instead I decided to focus on the bottom part of the coffee table. I began by filling in the wood knots and applying a nice primer. For that, I grabbed the bin primer that I usually use. This time I used grey. I probably could have used either the grey or the white, to be honest, but I just had the grey handy, so that provided me with a solid base to start with. After it dried, I got to work painting the main body. I blended a custom shade using 2 different colours of Porter's paints. And what's really great about their paint is that it comes with a built-in top coat, which makes the whole process just a lot smoother, and it just cuts out a step that you would need to do if you didn't have a built-in primer. Plus, it's really easy to grab just at Bunnings, which is my local hardware store, so that's super handy. I ended up using less than half a tub for the whole coffee table, so the paint only sent me back about $20 or less, which I think is pretty good for something this size. And as it was drying, I was super pleased with how the colour was coming out. It's one of those trendy shades at the moment, that nice light sage. Everyone seems to be liking it, and the table just looks so much more fresh and modern, totally in style. After that, I focused on the drawers, and there's one on each side of this coffee table, and both of them have this stunning dovetail joints at the ends. I really wanted to keep the dovetails intact somehow, so I carefully applied painter's tape over the joints. I cut around the edges and painted in a way that highlighted those features. And while I was busy focusing on the drawers, I looked down and noticed that Charlie had discovered a pencil I'd left out and was having a blast doodling all over the top of the table. But thankfully, it wasn't a big deal since I still needed to sand down the tabletop one last time. So once I wrapped up with the dovetails and Charlie was down for her nap, I grabbed out my electric sander and gave the entire surf a final sand down. And unfortunately, that meant all of her little artwork was gone. At this stage, I was nearly finished with the project. After giving the tabletop its last sanding, I chose to go in with a paint wash. And I took that same sage paint that I had used earlier and I thinned it out quite a lot with water. And then I brushed it over the surface and let it sit for a few minutes before wiping it off. To wipe it off, I did use paper towel, and I wouldn't necessarily suggest using it because it does break apart quite easily, but it's all I had on hand at the time. After the wash dried, I got to work on sealing it with a polyurethane top coat. I ended up putting 3 coats of the top coat in total, and in between each coat, I lightly sanded with a 600 grit paper to ensure that the finish stayed nice and smooth. So to finish it off, I was actually really happy already with the hardware that came on this coffee table. It's actually a really popular design at the moment, but it definitely really needed a good clean and tidy up. So once I gave it a shine, I put it back on the drawers, and I also took a little bit of time to cut out some drawer liners and added this lovely floral design inside. And I really think it made these drawers look fantastic and just give it a great finishing touch. With everything finished, it was finally time to stage and see this transformation come together. I kept the styling pretty simple so that the details could really shine. The fresh custom colour on the base, the soft wash across the top, and those dovetail joints on the drawers. And lastly, inside, the floral liners gave a nice little surprise when you open them up. If you've got an old orange tone coffee table sitting in your lounge room or in your shed that's looking a bit tired, this kind of makeover is actually a really simple project to take on. For me, it stretched out over a couple of days because I have a toddler running around, but if you've got the time, you could easily knock it out in a few hours. It's the perfect weekend project, low cost, low stress, and it's a really big payoff in the end. Looking back at where this one started, dirty, stained, on the side of the road, it's hard to believe that it's the same piece. I'm so happy with how it turned out. I'm definitely getting some pottery barn vibes. And look, if you enjoyed this makeover, please let me know in the comments what you think. And don't forget to subscribe and like, that really helps out my channel. And you get to see more flips like this one coming up. Thanks for watching. See you next time.